Elon Musk's footsteps echoed softly along the time-worn pavement as he navigated the labyrinth of narrow streets lined with brick facades and ivy-clad stoops. The gentle hum of early risers, a few neighbors greeting one another with nods and warm smiles, created a symphony of small-town life, a stark contrast to the cacophony of boardrooms and press conferences he was accustomed to. Today, he craved nothing more than a taste of ordinary life, a moment to breathe and simply observe the world without the relentless glare of cameras and flashing headlines. Without any pomp or ceremony, he approached the entrance of the Cozy Nook. The cafe, a beloved relic of the past, boasted hand-painted signs, mismatched but lovingly restored furniture, and a counter where the scent of freshly ground coffee mingled with the sweet aroma of baked goods. Its patrons, a mix of elderly residents, casual regulars, and a few wanderers seeking refuge from the chill, were engrossed in soft conversations and the occasional murmur of laughter. Elon pushed the door open, and a tinkling bell announced his arrival, a sound that, for a moment, harmonized with the gentle jazz playing in the background. He chose a quiet table by a large window that framed a picturesque view of a leafy courtyard. Settling into the warm glow of the morning light, Elon ordered a simple black coffee and a slice of apple pie, a modest request from a man who had navigated some of the most complex challenges in modern technology. The server, a gentle-eyed woman named Marjorie, whose kindness was as much a part of the cafe's charm as its vintage decor, smiled warmly as she jotted down his order. Marjorie had spent decades serving this community, and her calm presence lent the establishment a comforting air of reliability. As Elon sipped his coffee, he allowed his gaze to wander out the window. He observed an elderly couple strolling hand in hand, a group of teenagers laughing near a mural on the side of the building, and a solitary figure feeding pigeons in the square. For a brief moment, he wondered if he were not Elon Musk, but simply another resident of this town. Would the world treat him differently? The thought was bittersweet, a reminder that true freedom sometimes lay in the anonymity of everyday life. Just as he began to lose himself in these musings, a low rumble of motorcycle engines disturbed the delicate peace. At first it sounded like a distant memory of youthful rebellion, but soon the sound crescendoed into a roaring presence. The cafe's door swung open once again, this time with a bit more force. In strode a group of 5 rugged individuals clad in black leather jackets, their appearance sharply contrasting with the otherwise genteel atmosphere. Their boots thudded against the floor as they moved as a unit, exuding an air of brazen defiance. The leader of the group, a tall man with a shock of unruly hair and a tattooed forearm bearing a snarling emblem, fixed his gaze on the solitary figure by the window. This man, who would soon be known as Derek, wore his arrogance like armor. With a half smirk, he swaggered over to Elon's table, his voice loud enough to slice through the soft strains of jazz. "Hey there, stranger," Derek called out in a tone that mixed mockery with menace. "You sure picked the right place to hide. What's the matter, can't handle the real world out there?" His words, laced with a challenge, hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown before a calm warrior. Elon, unruffled by the intrusion, returned a measured smile. "I'm just enjoying a quiet morning," he replied in a tone that was firm yet gentle, his eyes never betraying any hint of alarm. "There's plenty of room for everyone to find peace, don't you think?" Derek's smirk widened into a grin of derision. "Peace, huh? Looks more like you're lost, trying to hide behind your coffee. Maybe you need a little wake-up call." With that, he reached out and snatched a forkful of apple pie from the plate that had been waiting patiently for Elon's enjoyment. The act was both an affront and an invitation to a confrontation. Before Elon could respond, another voice joined the fray, a voice that cut through the tension like a clarion call for decency. "That's enough," cried a determined tone from behind the counter. It belonged to a young server named Lillian, whose eyes, though wide with the tremors of adrenaline, burned with an unwavering resolve. Though not as physically imposing as the bikers, Lillian had spent years quietly enduring rude comments and unsolicited advances, and today, something within her had snapped. "Sir, please return the pie to its proper owner," Lillian said, stepping forward with a calm authority that belied her slight frame. "We pride ourselves on making this a safe and welcoming place for everyone. I must insist you show some respect." For a moment, the entire cave fell silent. The other patrons, startled by the sudden shift in atmosphere, exchanged nervous glances, Even the soft hum of conversation dwindled to a murmur as all eyes turned toward the unfolding confrontation. Derek's eyes narrowed, and his grip tightened on the plate of pie. "And who might you be?" he sneered, leaning in as if to intimidate her further. "You're just a server. What right do you have to boss me around?" Lillian's response was measured yet resolute. "My right is the right of every human being to be treated with dignity," she said, her voice echoing her inner strength. "I don't care who you are, and I certainly don't care about your opinions. Here at the Cozy Nook, everyone is welcome, and everyone deserves to feel safe." The tension in the room was palpable. Elon set down his coffee, his eyes flickering between Lillian and Derek. He realized that beneath the bravado of these men lay a simmering potential for chaos that threatened the sanctity of this peaceful morning. "Gentlemen," he began, his voice calm and unwavering, "there is no need for hostility. We're all just trying to enjoy a moment of calm. Why not join us in a conversation instead of resorting to such theatrics?" His words, imbued with a quiet authority, made Derek pause. For a brief second, it seemed as though the biker leader might reconsider his actions. But pride is a stubborn adversary, and Derek's scornful laugh soon cut through the momentary silence. "You talk big for someone in your position," he retorted, though his tone lacked the venom it once held. "Maybe you're the one who should watch his manners." As the verbal sparring continued, other members of the biker group shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a wiry man with a scar along his cheek, who introduced himself later as Marcus, muttered, "Maybe we should just let him be, Derek. This is a cave, not a fight club." Yet the camaraderie among them and their shared defiance pushed them to follow their leader's lead. Throughout the escalating exchange, Elon maintained his composure. His eyes, calm and penetrating, seemed to radiate a quiet wisdom that demanded respect without force. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he stated softly, "but I will not stand by while disrespect and aggression disturb the peace of this community." His gaze shifted to the other patrons, many of whom now watched with bated breath, caught between fear and admiration. At that very moment, an elderly gentleman near the back of the cave, Mr. Franklin, a retired school teacher known for his measured words, stood up and cleared his throat. "Let's remember," he said, his voice trembling slightly with emotion, "that we all share this space. A little kindness goes a long way." His words resonated with the older crowd, evoking memories of a time when civility was the norm, rather than the exception. Derek, still fuming, slammed his hand onto the table, causing a few glasses to rattle in their place settings. "You think a few words can fix everything?" he barked, his tone laced with defiance. "This isn't some schoolyard lesson." Yet even as he shouted, the look in his eyes revealed a crack in his otherwise impenetrable armor, a flicker of uncertainty perhaps, at the realization that the rules of this quiet town were not so easily dismissed. Before the situation could spiral further, the cave's atmosphere shifted once more with the arrival of unexpected backup. In a low, clear voice that cut through the tension like a knife, a middle-aged man named Charles, who had quietly observed the scene from behind a bookshelf of vintage records, stepped forward. "Gentlemen, I think it's time to settle down," he said, his tone diplomatic yet firm. "We're all adults here. If you have an issue, perhaps a calm discussion is in order." Charles's interjection, coming from someone who was neither young nor overly assertive, carried a weight that made even Derek hesitate. For a few long moments, silence reigned. The cave, with its softly lit corners and nostalgic memorabilia, seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the next move in this unexpected drama. Elon's gaze softened as he observed the unfolding scene. In that moment, he reflected on the delicate balance between standing up for oneself and preserving the peace. Sometimes, he murmured quietly, the most courageous act is to simply be kind in the face of adversity. His words were not addressed to anyone in particular, but seemed to echo within the hearts of everyone present. Yet, as the tension began to ebb, the sound of a siren, distant at first, then growing louder, broke through the fragile calm. A staff member, perhaps unsettled by the rising discord, had discreetly called the authorities. Within minutes, 2 local police officers entered the cave, their presence commanding and reassuring. The officers asked the bikers to step outside and calm down, reminding them that public peace was not up for negotiation. Derek's bravado faltered under the steady gaze of law enforcement. The biker leader muttered a string of curses as his cohorts exchanged resigned looks. One by one, they slunk out the door, leaving behind a cave that was equal parts relieved and sorrowful for the lost sense of harmony. As the officers finished their brief de-escalation, a collective sigh of relief seemed to ripple through the remaining patrons. Once the commotion had subsided, Elon rose from his seat and walked over to Lillian. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice filled with genuine appreciation. "Not everyone has the courage to speak up, even when it's not easy." Lillian's eyes glistened with a mixture of relief and pride as she nodded, her hands still trembling slightly from the adrenaline of the encounter. "I just couldn't stand by and watch disrespect take over," she replied, her voice resolute despite the lingering tension. The atmosphere in the Cozy Nook gradually returned to its usual gentle cadence. Some patrons returned to their conversations, while others sat in reflective silence. Mr. Franklin resumed his seat, his eyes reflecting both sadness and hope for a kinder world. Marjorie, the server, offered a soft smile as she began refilling cups and tidying up the disrupted tables. Even Charles, who had intervened with calm authority, returned to his quiet corner with a knowing nod. For Elon, the incident had been a stark reminder of the fragility of civility and the importance of everyday acts of courage. He sipped the last of his coffee, pondering the delicate interplay between strength and gentleness that had characterized the encounter. "There's a lesson here," he thought, one that transcends the boundaries of fame and fortune. It's about the small moments, standing up for what is right, defending the dignity of another, and creating ripples of change that can transform an entire community. That afternoon, as the golden light began to wane and the shadows grew longer, Elon left the cave with a quiet determination. The memory of that morning, the clash of aggression, and the soft, unwavering stand of a single individual remained etched in his mind. It was a reminder that even in a world that often seems dominated by chaos, there are still individuals who dare to uphold values of respect and kindness. Over the next few days, word of the incident spread through the town like wildfire. Locals whispered about the mysterious visitor in simple attire who had, without raising his voice, managed to diffuse a potentially volatile situation. Some expressed regret for having witnessed such conflict in their beloved sanctuary, while others found a renewed sense of pride in the community's ability to come together in the face of adversity. A week later, just as the town was beginning to settle back into its familiar rhythm, an unexpected scene unfolded at the Cozy Nook. The large glass door swung open with a confident flourish, and in stepped Elon Musk once again, this time not incognito, but in a sharply tailored suit that commanded attention. Flanked by two discreet bodyguards, his entrance was met with a hush of surprise from the remaining patrons. Gone was the casual simplicity of his earlier appearance. Now he carried the air of a man on an important mission. Elon's gaze swept across the room, pausing at the counter where Lillian was busily preparing the day's orders. Her eyes widened in recognition, and a spark of apprehension flickered across her face. Summoning her courage, she met his gaze as he approached. "Lillian," he said, his voice imbued with warmth and gravity, "I wanted to speak with you again." The cave, still recovering from the memory of the previous disturbance, seemed to lean in to listen. Taking a seat at the counter, Elon continued, "Your actions that day, your willingness to stand up for what is right, even when it wasn't easy, left an indelible mark on me. I believe that our society, especially in times like these, needs more people like you, brave, principled, and unafraid to protect the dignity of others." His words, measured and sincere, resonated deeply with everyone listening. Lillian's voice trembled slightly as she responded, "I just did what felt natural, Mr. Musk. I couldn't ignore the injustice unfolding before me." Elon nodded, a respectful smile playing on his lips. "Sometimes the simplest act of courage can change the course of our day, or even our lives. I want you to know that there is a greater purpose behind such actions." He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice so that only she could hear. "I'd like to extend an invitation. I'm involved with a community initiative, a social welfare foundation, dedicated to promoting kindness, respect, and equality. We're always seeking individuals who embody these values. Individuals who aren't afraid to stand up for what's right in their communities." A hushed murmur ran through the room as patrons exchanged glances. Here was Elon Musk, not only a titan of industry, but also a champion of everyday virtue, offering a chance to turn a moment of personal bravery into a broader, more impactful movement. Lillian's heart pounded as she absorbed his words. I'm honored, she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. I never imagined that something as ordinary as serving coffee could lead to something so extraordinary. Elon's expression softened. It's not about the coffee or the pie. It's about the courage to act when you witness injustice, no matter how small. In our modern world, where technology often isolates us from one another, the simple act of standing up for another human being can bridge that gap. I hope you'll consider joining us, not just as a server or an employee, but as a vital force for positive change. For a long moment, the entire cafe remained silent, the weight of his invitation settling in like a promise of a better future. Some patrons, particularly the older ones who had seen decades of change and challenge, nodded slowly in approval. Their eyes shone with a mixture of hope and recognition, a reminder that every generation must nurture the seeds of decency and compassion if society was ever to thrive. In that charged atmosphere, Elon concluded, the world is at a crossroads, and it's up to each of us to choose which path we'll follow. I believe that even the smallest gestures can lead to transformative change. Today you showed that strength is not measured by physical might, but by the integrity of one's spirit. His words were met with quiet applause, a recognition that courage, however modest, was a beacon for all who dared to dream of a kinder, more compassionate world. As the day drew to a close, the cafe gradually returned to its usual rhythm. The incident had left scars, but it had also kindled a newfound resolve among those who had witnessed it. Conversations sparked around the idea of community and mutual support, and whispers of change spread quietly through the corridors of the Cozy Nook. For many, that week marked a turning point, a reminder that even in the most ordinary settings, extraordinary acts of courage can ripple outward, inspiring others to stand up, speak out, and reclaim the dignity that binds us all together. Reflecting on this unfolding tale, one cannot help but see it as a metaphor for the challenges of modern life. A world where the pressure to conform often overshadows the need to stand up for what is right. Elon Musk's quiet sojourn into a small-town cafe, and the courageous act of a single server named Lillian, remind us that even in an era dominated by rapid technological advances and fleeting digital interactions, the timeless values of kindness, respect, and integrity remain as essential as ever. In our daily lives, it is all too easy to overlook the importance of these small yet significant acts of bravery. Whether it's speaking up in the face of injustice or simply treating a stranger with warmth and dignity, every gesture contributes to a tapestry of community and shared humanity. The story challenges us to consider how can we each in our own way be the change we wish to see in the world. It calls on us to remember that real strength lies not in physical prowess or the accumulation of wealth, but in the courage to care for one another. As you leave this narrative behind, I encourage you to reflect on your own experiences. Think about the moments, big or small, when you chose to stand up for what was right, even when it wasn't the easiest path. Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. Let this be a space where we learn from each other's acts of quiet heroism. And if you found this tale both moving and thought-provoking, please join me in watching the next video for more stories that inspire us to live with compassion and courage.